Marchaev, who himself used to be a military officer, was not allowed to run for the job of the governor because also he spoke out publicly against the war. And the Communist Party was forced to run a different candidate. But though the central leadership of the Communist Party is totally in the pocket of Zyuganov, totally in the pocket of the Kremlin, the local party leaders in some places are very critical, both of their own party leadership and of what the Kremlin is doing and of the war. And Buryatia is one of the cases, and we will see how will the election go, because of course there will be massive electoral fraud, and they will declare a united Russia victory anyhow, no matter what happens. But it seems that in Buryatia, quite a few people will try to use the opportunity to vote against United Russia to show their opposition to the war. Of course, their votes will not be properly counted, and we'll see how it will affect the society there.
Okay, Boris, in the couple of minutes we have remaining, I want to ask one final question and then give you an opportunity to speak on what you think is coming, whether you want to call it a prediction or an educated guess or what have you. But I want to just ask you very quickly about the ways in which this can move forward. And what I mean by that is the United States and NATO, the imperial system and the strategic planners that make decisions for the empire, they're not just going to allow Putin to come to some negotiating table and compromise and walk away from this. They want to bleed Russia. They want to force Russia into a quagmire that, disastrous effects of which would last for decades. So my question then is, as you mentioned earlier, that the Kremlin seems to be making moves towards potentially shifting towards compromise. How is that even possible, given the forces that are arrayed, not only the United States and its desire to bleed Russia, but also the fact that the opinion polls in Ukraine show vast majorities of the country have zero interest in negotiating with the invading army? So how do we move forward, even if the Kremlin wants to compromise?
Well, the Kremlin is not just Putin. It's much more than one person, as you can imagine. And, well, it seems that there is a kind of consensus in the elite at this point that the war is lost and there is no way you can even try to win it. You have to try to achieve some kind of compromise. That's the kind of consensus. There is one problem there. The problem is called Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. How are they going to solve this problem? I don't really know. And you see, it's not that Putin doesn't want to negotiate. It's not the problem that Putin is against negotiation. The problem is that nobody will negotiate with Putin because he's too toxic. And their perspective for the Russian elite at this stage is Putinism without Putin. So getting rid of Putin somehow, and so far I think they don't know how to do it, how to get it, but getting rid of Putin somehow, and then, well, you can declare tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, that, well, there is a regime change. Well, Putin is gone. Without Putin, Russia is turning to a totally opposite direction. And it not only it wants to negotiate, it wants to cooperate. And the day after tomorrow, possibly all these people who were writing some patriotic articles about the existential animosity between Russians and Ukrainians would be writing articles and making statements praising Ukraine and praising the West and so on and so on, as long as we can get to the status quo ante, maybe the status quo ante of, say, 2014, for example. And so on. Russian troops withdrawing from Ukraine, definitely a few people who are associated with the propaganda effort of this war would be punished. Maybe a few politicians would be used as scapegoats. Uh, so the idea is that, well, you have to find the scapegoats and find the way to negotiate with the West and try to keep everything as it used to be. The red line at this point is that Crimea should stay under Russian control. And by the way, here I think it is quite reasonable because neither Russian officials nor Ukrainian officials, no Western officials even consider what do Crimean people think about this. You see, if you are if you are following the discourse on the Russian side or on the Ukrainian or Western side, it's all about territory. Crimea should belong to Russia because it used to be part of Russia for some years, okay? Or it should belong to Ukraine because it used to be Ukrainian before 2014. Or it used to be Ukrainian according to Western standards because legally this territory is Ukrainian. The problem is that people in the Crimean Peninsula don't want to be Ukrainians. I'm not sure they want to be Russians, by the way, but they definitely don't want to be part of Ukraine. This is a very important point. So I think some kind of referendum is quite a logical issue, a logical solution. But the question is whether it's going to happen. But I think that the really important issue for the Russian elite is not the Crimea. Crimea is important, but not that important. The really important issue is to regain the opportunity to sell Russian resources abroad and to regain the opportunity to invest Russian money abroad. As I told you, the crisis of overaccumulation is very serious. It's one of the causes of the war. So without the capacity of exporting capital, Russian ruling class is not properly capable of functioning. Because if you want Russian money to be invested inside Russia, you need a different kind of economy and a different kind of ruling class and a different kind of system and so on. So they are totally determined to kind of negotiate their way back into the world system. And well, the question is, how are they going to solve the problem of Putin? It is getting increasingly interesting that the military establishment is now very angry, and they are angry at Putin. They are angry at Shoigu and Gerasimov, the two top persons who are associated with the decision to start the war. Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, and Gerasimov, the head of the head of staff. Both people are extremely unpopular with the military. So we're going to see what's going to happen, especially if the military defeat is not only becoming inevitable, but becoming already a fact of daily life. And that's basically what the elites have in mind. The question is whether it's going to work their way. And again, speaking about what Western governments want to do with Russia, don't forget about Russia itself. All these calculations, all these theories and strategies, they just do not consider the existence of Russian population, Russian people, Russian society. And here is the major problem, because I'm pretty sure that once Putin's regime is gone, or at least when it's beginning to change itself, that will release tremendous social energy, which will work towards political and social change. And it's not just for Russia alone, because the new liberal capitalist system is in crisis globally. This war is just one of the symptoms of the global crisis of the neoliberal capitalist model. The same way as the First World War was the symptom of the crisis of the classical liberal capitalist model of the late 19th century or early 20th century. And in that sense, Russia, again, in many ways, is uh, following the same path as it was following in the 1916, 1917. I'm not going to say it's going to be the same story. It's going to be a very different story. But well, this is a tremendous feeling of déjà vu. We are very much in the same type of crisis. It's not the same crisis, but the same type of crisis when the old elite is unable to get out of the trap in which it jumped already, and well, they they're doomed. They're doomed, and Russia is not.
That's very well said. Boris Kagarlitsky has been with me. I could talk to Boris for hours and hours, but we won't do that today. Boris Kagarlitsky is somebody you should be reading. Go over to Russian Descent on Substack, subscribe to that. Make sure that you are reading it every single time it arrives in your email. Boris Kagarlitsky, again, he is the chief editor of the online journal Rabkor. That's Russian language, Rabkor, RABKOR.ru. If you have any Russian skills, I highly recommend you subscribe there and follow, translations and so forth. Boris Kagarlitsky, you could follow him also on social media. Boris, thank you so much for chatting with us and helping us understand all of these things.
Thank you, Eric.
Listeners, thank you as always, and we will chat again next time.